7 Crazy Stories of Glitch in the Matrix. Okay. About 20 years ago I was working at call center. By the way, this story is completely true. I waited for the bus along with other people getting off work. I walked on the bus and took a seat. I couldn't help but notice a young blonde girl who looked to be around 8 years old. She was smiling and almost Shirley Temple cute, the child actress. As the bus continued on, I was shocked to see that she was completely alone. Especially in a city. That's what really made her stand out. I was thinking, who in their right mind would let this child on the bus? Alone. I was new at the job and I went to ask the bus driver which bus I needed to transfer to. Before he could answer, the blonde little girl cheerfully told me the bus I needed to take. I thanked her and the bus driver repeated the same thing. The bus approached my transfer location that was an open empty parking lot and a bench. 3 of us got off the bus in this vast parking lot. There was a lady my age who was around 20, the little blonde girl, and myself. There was nobody else waiting there. Here is where it gets really weird. It's this vast empty paved parking lot with only a bench. The bus drove away. All of a sudden I see the lady looking all over the place. She has this stressed and puzzled look on her face as she looks over at me. She didn't say anything, but she didn't have to. I looked all over and the little blonde girl was nowhere to be found. The parking lot was empty and it was large. There was nowhere to go. I saw the little blonde girl get off the bus. She was gone. Vanished. Our bus arrived and we both got on. The lady sat in front of me. She still had that perplexed look on her face. I tapped her on the shoulder and I said, "Did that little girl just disappear? I saw you looking for her too." She replied, "Yeah." I knew we both experienced something that we would never forget. Over 20 years later it's still as bizarre as that day. I wish I had have exchanged numbers with that lady so we could have discussed this event we witnessed. I've often wondered what happened. Was the little blonde girl an angel? Was she there to make sure I took the right bus? Would something bad had happened if I took the wrong bus? Finally, to answer the inevitable question that people will ask, was a little girl reported missing in the news after this? The answer is no. No child was reported missing. She simply vanished. So, still living at the lighthouse. As it was about 2.5 kilometers from any other property, we never locked the door, and as it was on the beach my friends would come and stay regularly so we could go surfing. Anyway, my mum come into my bedroom one morning and say there is a strange guy in the lounge room, he is young, but I don't know him. I being tired said, it's probably just X, Y or Z who needed a place to sleep, and I rolled over to get back to sleep. My mum being persistent, prodded me much harder this time and said no, I really don't know this guy. Reluctantly I got up, and peered into the lounge room, and to my horror, I didn't know the guy either. So, guy was sitting in jeans, shirtless, sitting on floor with back against the lounge, watching TV and smoking a cigarette, with keys and items sitting beside him, looked quite relaxed. He was young, about 20, long disheveled hair, needed a bath, small frame. He didn't see us looking at him, so we decided to get my father, not that he could do anything as he was 70 odd at the time. Dad walked into the lounge room and said, "Hey mate, how's things?" Guy looked up, smiled and said all good, then continued to watch TV, kind of ignoring Dad. Anyway, after /forth with the guy, Dad asked, "What's your name?" Guy said, I don't know." Then we all freaked and thought, oh, we have a crazy. After a while we realized that he had escaped from the mental hospital in town. Dad figured this out by looking at his belongings and doing some basic Sherlocking. He called the hospital and said, "Are you missing X, Y, Z?" And they said, "Oh yes, is that where he is? We'll send someone to collect him." Although this is freaky, as we have had a guy in our house for God knows how long and he is mentally unstable. The freakiest thing was just before the cavalry arrived, Dad was engaging in conversation with him. It was Mum/Dad/me and this guy all standing in the lounge room, calm conversation although strange at times. Dad asked him, "So, why did you come here in particular?" And the guy said, "I will never forget it. Oh, the light drew me to this place and this dimension, and I also know Rob," while pointing to a photo on the wall of me, not actually to me, photo was recent. I have never met this guy in my life, but he knew my name and pointed to a photo of me. No other items in the house were disturbed for him to find out who is who, etc. No identifying information around to identify my name and that the picture was of me. As he was crazy and talking about dimensions, could we have met in another dimension? There's this brick and mortar, mom and pop shop, auto parts shop that I go to ever so often to pick up parts for my cars. One day I walked in and this man who isn't easy to forget welcomes me into the shop and asks me what I need. He introduced himself and turns out his name was the same as the shop, well call the shop Bill's Auto Parts. I began explaining to him what parts I needed and he started checking the system to see if they had it in their inventory. This man, Bill, was an older gentleman with a southern accent, slender in size and not very tall. Couldn't have been taller than 5 feet 8 inches. As I'm looking around the shop I see behind the counter where Bill is standing a wooden stool and there's a black and white cat. The body of the cat was all black with a white streak down his chest, white around his mouth, eyes and all his paws were white. Anyway, as I continue to look around, Bill tells me he is my part and we continue with the transaction and I leave. A couple of years later I go back to the same shop and I ask for Bill and no one at the shop knows who I'm referring to. I start describing what Bill looks like and sound like, as no one there had any sort of accent let alone a southern one, and still, no one knew who that is. Then one gentleman comes to the front from the back of the shop and says that Bill had been dead for 20 years. To my shock I asked this man if there's someone else who works at the shop with the same name and he continues to inform me that there isn't, but behind the man I was speaking to was the exact same cat I had seen all those years back. I asked about the cat and the man said he just showed up one day and became the shop cat. To this day, I still think about Bill and that occurrence. A few nights ago, I was leaving my parents' house to go home. My husband was driving, and my 3 kids were in the back. About 5 minutes after leaving, I got this overwhelming feeling of dread, and pictured/saw our car flipping over the hill further down the road. I immediately turned around and double-checked that all the kids were buckled in correctly, all of them are in 5-point harnesses. I thought probably just my anxiety being annoying again and brushed it off. About 5 minutes after that, my husband was telling me a story about work, and, this is going to sound bizarre but I swear, it was like my time slowed down and I saw about 10 different scenarios in a split second. I screamed stop to my husband. He slammed on the brakes. Literally a second later, 3 deer ran in front of us and the car on the opposite side of the road came veering into our lane, right where we would have been if we hadn't stopped. It would have been a bad head-on collision. The speed limit is 50 miles per hour. Very likely with us ending up at the bottom of a steep hill, and at the very least, totaling our car. So 2 years ago I went on vacation to Spain. It was a package tour for teens. I befriended a guy and a girl there, who were a few rooms away from me in the hotel. Since we were over 18 we were allowed to hang out alone outside of the hotel, and so we practically spent the whole trip just walking around town and drinking together. I clearly remember adding the girl, let's name her X, on Facebook and talking to her on Messenger, since that's how the 3 of us were planning our days. I even started a group conversation with X and that boy, let's name him Y. Fast forward to today, it was her birthday so I wanted to wish her happy birthday on Messenger, and she just wasn't in my contacts. I thought maybe she unfriended me because of my copious amount of shit post. But looking her up on Facebook didn't bring up anything. I decided to ask Y whether he'd heard from her recently and he said he never met that girl. I looked through all the people me and X both added on Facebook during our trip, and even asked some of them about her. Nobody seems to recall meeting X. Y claims we were hanging out with another girl, who I do know and spoke to on the trip, but never hung out with. I don't know what to make of it and I'm kind of freaking out. I'm thinking maybe my mental health is much worse than I thought, but honestly, there's a huge difference between mild seasonal depression and hallucinating a person for 2 weeks straight. Recently, my roommate and I recalled an event that happened to us last year. I had just gotten home from work around midday or so, when the sun was still up. My roommate told me a cop in our town had been shot and killed in a chase, which surprised me because we're a very small town where little happens. We talked about it for a minute, and how she saw it online. When we went to look, the information was gone. The next day, a family friend told us about the same shooting, only that it had happened late at night, and we found pictures online of the scene at nighttime. We were really confused, since we knew it happened earlier. All reports showed it happened at night, though. Other information, the location and death, were all the same as we remembered. Sometimes I wonder if we were supposed to do something with the knowledge we had, but who knows? The cop did die in the end, and his partner was seriously injured. I forgot about this event until just recently, when my roommate was talking about similar weird stuff happening to her. Thought it would fit in here. Note, neither of really drink, nor do we use drugs. So, many years ago we lived at a lighthouse, well, a house that was at the base of a lighthouse. The place itself was strange. Anyway, being typical late teenagers, My sister and I used to annoy each other, and for some reason one night, I found some old blocks that I used to play with as a kid. These were just wooden blocks of quite strange shapes with no locking system, you just stack them up and make towers etc. Anyway, we were watching some crap show, she was on the lounge and I was just sitting with back to lounge on the floor just stacking these blocks beside me, badly as I was half concentrating TV show and what I was doing. So, argument ensued about something, I forget what, and the next thing you know, these little blocks, probably weighed about 10 grams each, but all straight lines with sharp edges/corners, were being thrown at each other. There were probably about 50 to 60 of these things flying about as we tried to collect each other. Next thing. Bang! My sister got me fair and square in the eye and it fooling hurt. I was pissed off and went out to the sink/mirror to see how bad it was, only a slight cut. I would have been about 20 seconds away from that room, and burst back into the lounge room, and there was my sister, sitting watching TV, like nothing had happened, with all those little blocks and 3x seemingly impossible towers. I just freaked out, and said WTF. She looked at me strangely, kind of not there, and shrugged her shoulders. I then pressed her as to how the fool did all those blocks, which were in every corner of the room due to us throwing them at each other, end up back in the middle of the room and stacked nearly perfectly. She then motioned with her finger, like she was saying she just pointed at them to be like that. She could see I was getting stressed/freaked, and just shrugged her shoulders with a weird smile. She didn't/wouldn't talk to me at this time, just motioning etc. I then went to mom and explained the situation, and then she more focused on the fact that I was throwing the blocks at my sister rather than her at me and she was pissed off about it. But I then pressed her again and again about what I experienced and what my sister indicated she did, and then she kind of stopped, looked me right in the eye and said, "Trust me, don't mess with your sister," in a very serious, not to be fooled with tone and manner, then turned around and kept on sewing or whatever she was doing. To this day, I have no idea how that happened. It would have taken about 10 minutes to find all those blocks and then to have them stacked in 3x towers would have taken utmost care and time, for I had never stacked them that high. Then for my sister and mother to act strangely was extremely weird as well, like it wasn't them. No other weird experience with them before or since. Still a massive head scratcher to this day. If you want your story to be shared, write it down in the comments section. Thanks for watching.